Shoto Todoroki has the ability to blow up some explosive damage in your opponent's face while having some very awesome control capabilities, mitigating that mid-range place where it can definitely be explosive and burst you down, but at the same time prevent you from doing what you need to do to be able to kill him back, making him an incredibly powerful character. Hey everybody, Espira, and we're back with another deck profile. Today, showing off one of the characters that is my favorite and one that I'm looking to potentially main for this first set of the MHA card game. Specifically, Shoto Todoroki is looking to be one of the more flexible characters in terms of how it can play out. Like I was saying in the intro, you can be explosive, however you can play controller and set up your stuff, but you can burst for extremely high damage while shutting down your opponent's capability of defending, which is a combo that I absolutely love, and it's a little bit combo-ishy in that front, which I really appreciate. And of course, guys, if you guys want to see me play decks like these live, we'll be kicking off some MHA gameplay during the streams very soon. Then link to the Twitch is down in the description. But without further ado, let's get started on the deck profile. And of course, we start off with the character card himself. 7 hand size, 20 health. So he has a lower health, but he does get the extra card. But he can be a little bit frail in the sense that you can't be taking too much damage. Thankfully, it comes back on the fact that he can do big bursts of damage. First enhance, he commits 1 foundation. Your attack gets +1 damage for every 2 range attacks in your discard pile. Meaning the later the game goes, the more he scales and the more powerful his attacks can become. And this can, if you're doing this on multiple attacks, they both burst for a lot of damage. And finally has a response commit. You discard the top 3 cards of your deck, and after your rival plays an enhanced ability on a non-character card, cancel it. I mean, at any point in the game, you can really decide that what your opponent is doing is either going to defend themselves too well to prevent you from going for game, or they're going to hit in for too much. You want to prevent speed. This really gives Shoto the flexibility of being able to mitigate what your opponent is doing, and it rewards matchup knowledge. If you understand what your opponent has and you're able to shut that specific thing down to prevent them from being and having the most explosive turn they can, it's really good at turning the tide of the game. For this build specifically, we're aiming at Water. Water just kind of has the best pool of things that works along Shoto. You get access to some of Froppy's really powerful attacks. You get access to some of Sero's flexibility cards. So there's just that kind of balance right there that Water provides you in being able to go off and probably play the best version of this deck in my opinion. So starting off with difficulty, we'll start with our foundations, then move on to the attacks. We have 4 gotchas. Response after this card is committed during the enhanced step. This attack has +1 or -1 speed. This combos well with our character card in being able to have an additional speed on top of the damage that we add, plus 0 difficulty. We just need these to make sure that we can get additional foundations in the early starts of the turn. Similarly, desperate times, response flip. After your rival draws any number of cards during the combat phase, they commit 1 foundation. So if they're trying to replenish their hand, we're going to punish them by making them have a much more difficult time being able to defend themselves. Tape as a 2 of enhance flip changes attack zone to mid, and then enhance flip. This mid attack gets -2 speed. Just a couple of defensive cards, and can generally be more annoying if we can predict that our opponent doesn't have a very specific type of block. Then we can definitely manipulate this to our benefit, or we can just mitigate this to make sure that we actually block attacks appropriately. Precise control as a 4 of enhance. Add this card to your hand with breaker 1. Incredibly powerful card at any point in the game. If you just know that you need an additional block, this is one way to get there. A super good card. Amphibious as a 2 of enhance 1 per turn. If a card has left your card pool this turn, ready this foundation playable while committed. We only run 2 because we don't actually have that many ways to be able to get cards out of our card zone, but it is flexible. If our opponent decides to do something like that, then we can go ahead and do that. Amphibious ambush is probably the best way we have to go on about that, but nevertheless, it's just nice flexibility as well as just being probably one of the better 1-cost foundations that we have available. And finally, to round it out, observant student as our last 1-cost in a playset. Enhance flip, look at the top card of your deck, just being able to mitigate knowing what your checks are going to be and be able to make a better plays from there. And then deadlock, enhance, and commit. If a card has left your card pool this turn, add 1 range attack from your discard pile to your hand. Not gonna happen super often, only really combos again with Amphibious Ambush, but just the enhance itself gives us a little bit of more consistency. We do struggle a little bit as far as the foundations go. Water doesn't have a great depth foundation wise. They have really strong ones, but there's not a lot of depth. So we're just kind of trying to fill in the slots as best as we can and keeping into account our curve. Moving on, we have what's their plan. Once again, flexible options. And now we're moving on to our 2 difficulty foundations. Enhance, flip, choose one of the following effects. Both players discard 1 momentum. The next attack either loses EX, powerful, or stun. This really rewards us once again for knowing our matchup knowledge and being able to prevent our opponent from being able to pop off in a way that we can't deal with. Classmate introductions as a 2-of. Enhance if your rival has not played a block this turn, it gets +1 speed. And then enhance if it is your first attack, it gets +1 damage. This just kind of kicking us off. It just gives our first attack most of the time just the ability to be that little bit harder to block, deal a little bit more damage. So at the end of the day, it's not too bad. It fills in the slot just fine. Moving on to Frozen, which is another really good one. Enhance your turn, destroy 1 foundation, your rival commits 1 foundation. Really useful late game. We have committed foundations we're not doing anything with. Well, now we can start destroying some stuff to be able to force our opponent to have a much harder time. And that's really what we want to do. We want to make it really difficult for them to block because we want to push in some massive damage. Self-Assured as a 2-of is incredibly powerful, but does have unique, so you do need to be careful about that. Enhance Commit, change the zone of this attack. Again, if we can predict what our opponent is doing, or if we want to defend ourselves from what our opponent is doing more efficiently, this allows us to do that. And Enhance Destroy, draw 1 card for every 4 range attacks in your discard pile late game. This is what's going to allow you to be able to push for game, because this deck can lack a little bit in card draw. So being able to mitigate that late game by being able to draw into your final attacks to get in that last piece of damage when your opponent's probably all stunned out is incredibly powerful. But it does have unique, so we can only run it as a 2-of because it's not mandatory to our game plan, but seeing it is definitely nice. Wall Cling as a 4-of is incredibly powerful. Enhanced Flip, if this attack is blocked, it deals no damage, which means we can partial block all day and assure that we're not going to take damage. When it comes to a character card that has such a low health as Todoroki, you really want to be able to mitigate that with the few cards you have in hand. So mid blocks automatically defend everything, which is really, really nice. Also gets around some effects that say, even if it's partial blocked, it deals damage. Well, this also helps us in that front. Sticky Balls as a 2-of, incredibly powerful. I love this card, but once again has unique, so we do need to be careful with that. Enhance Flip, at the top card, your rival's discard pile to their card pool. Enhance Commit, this non-range attack gets -4 speed. It's defensive when we need it to be, and it also shuts down our opponent when we need to be, which makes it incredibly, incredibly valuable. I love this card. It's such a shame it has unique, but if it didn't have unique, it'd be completely broken. It is a phenomenal card when we're going to the late game and trying to push in. And finally, to round out our foundations, we have 2 copies of Rescue completed. Enhance Destroy, ready 2 face down foundations that have not been ready this combat phase, and Enhance Commit 1 foundation. This attack gets +1 or -2 speed. Good defensively, allows us to extend our plays. We're effectively trading 1 foundation for 2 foundations, which is really powerful in the later halves of the game, especially when we combo this with some floppy cards that want us to have active face down foundations. Moving on to the attack cards, we have a playset of Ice Storm for difficulty, Breaker 2, Powerful 3, Range. So some really great keywords on there. It's great defensively. Powerful 3 means that when we're bursting in for that last damage, we can toss all our momentum into it and make it absolutely massive. Enhance, this attack can't be blocked by attack cards, so all the better. Just makes it more difficult for our opponent to be able to block. And Deadlock Enhance, this attack gets +2 speed, and the speed cannot be reduced. Todoroki has a lot of cards that actually punish Deadlock quite a bit, which means that you're really going to be able to mitigate your opponent wanting to go too high on foundations, and it kind of put them in the weird spot. They don't want to go too high, because if they go too high on foundations, they unlock all your deadlocks. However, if they stay too low, we can stun them out of a lot of their options, which is all the better. Then we have Massive Flash Freeze as a 2-of. And again, all these attacks are going to be ranged, by the way. Todoroki is a ranged attacker, so we want to make sure that we get our boosts as much as possible. Enhance, discard the top card of your deck. Your next check to play your ranged attack gets +1, all the better. We want to really be able to get out as many attacks as we can when we are going for it. And Deadlock Enhance, once again, the next check you make to your play, an attack passes. Hard punish on the deadlock. So if they're going to go and try to mitigate us being able to stun them out, well, we're just going to make sure that we can punish them really hard by being able to chain a bunch of really powerful attacks. Grasping Tape Toss is our throw. I love including throws whenever I can into decks, so we're including this one as a 2-of. Range, stun 1 on the base, which is incredibly powerful. Enhance, if it's not blocked, commit 1 rival foundation, so then we're getting an additional 1 if our opponent's not in a position to block. And Deadlock Enhance, add 2 rival foundations to the bottom of their deck. Once again, punish them really hard for the deadlock stuff. And I really like throws because no matter what, we can make this massive. We can punch in for 10, 15 damage, and at least half is going to get through because this is a throw. And I love that versatility in throw cards. And Zero is what really allows us to be able to do that in terms of his attacks. There's many you can tech in here. I have some on the sideboard, just things to keep in mind. But generally speaking, when we want to push in for damage and our opponent's still going to block, we're going to make it difficult for him. Frigid Heatwave as a playset is absolutely insane. This deck can struggle a little bit with card draw because there's just not a ton that lets us do it, and Frigid Heatwave is what allows us to do so. Enhance, if you have 6 or more range attacks in your discard pile, draw 2. Phenomenal late game. And then Enhance, discard the top 3 cards of your deck. This attack has +2 damage for each range attack discarded this way, just pumping it up even further. It's already a 5 speed, which makes it incredibly strong. And then 4 damage on top of that could be, you know, 6, 8, 10 if you get incredibly lucky. So in general, an incredible incredibly powerful attack that also allows us to be able to get into the late game super well by being able to draw his cards. Absolutely love this card. Giant Ice Wall as a 3 of. I used to have this as a 4 of, but I left it down as a 3 of because it turns out being your first attack isn't great. You really want to be able to get the enhance. Breaker 1, ranged, stun 2. Stun 2 is incredibly powerful, especially with the enhance where we discard 1 momentum and our next range attack gets stun 2. So again, furthering our ability to be able to stun our opponent. If you chain these, you're able to stun over and over and over again, and this is really what's going to allow you to force your opponent to be in a really awkward position, because now we're forcing them to have no ways to block. Frog Lashing is just there because it's an incredibly powerful attack. It hits for so much damage. It has Breaker 1, enhances attack as +1 damage for each of your ready face down foundations. We already have a lot of foundations that flip, which is incredibly powerful. It's kind of why we went with the water thing as well, because it just allows us to be able to pump a ton of damage, as well as enhance ready 2 face down foundations, extending our aggro. And this is my favorite part about it. We're going to get a lot of flips, so why not get the utility of being able to get them back up so that we can extend our aggro or extend our defense if we're done attacking for the turn. That's what I really, really like about this card. And finally, to round out, we have 2 Amphibious Ambush. Range, combo range, so you need to have attacked with a range attack beforehand, but all our attacks are in range, so that's not a problem there. 5 damage, 3 speed, combo enhance. Your rival adds 1 face-up foundation from their stage to their card pool, then builds a top card of their deck face down. So they do still get the foundation back, quote unquote, but having an extra card in card pool scales incredibly harder than just giving them 1 foundation, which makes it much more difficult for them to be able to defend prolonged attacks. And then enhance, add 1 other ranged attack from your card pool to your momentum. So this is a way that we can get a card out of our card pool. So like I said, we don't have a million ways to be able to proc the abilities that care about us getting stuff out of our card pool, but it's a way to get there. It lowers our difficulty on our next attack, as well as provides us momentum to be able to go into Giant Ice Wall, which I really like that as well. And that's the base deck, guys. In terms of the side deck, it's not a full-size side deck. They're just cards to consider, and since we don't really know the meta, I'm not entirely sure how we would side deck, but things to consider: if you will, Force of Nature, if you know you're going up against a Earth, Fire, or Water, incredibly powerful to be able to seal their foundation or asset every single turn. You seal 1 asset or foundation just straight up, so it's really flexible. I mean, it's a good sideboard card if you know that you're going up specifically against these matchups, because then you can start shutting down your opponent. And like I said, Sero in himself provides some interesting gameplay in terms of if we need to be a bit more flexible and deal with trickier opponents that have a better time dealing with our stuns and big damage, we can actually just side into Sero, who himself has like way better attacks that, you know, can fiddle with our opponent. Now that we know what they're on, we can choose zones that are more difficult for them to attack, or we can attack them in ways that they're not ready. So we max out on Grasping Grave Toss to give us throws, as well as Tape Swing to be able to give us some big damage attacks. But guys, with that said, that's Shoto Todoroki, my big damage build of him. It's not perfect, but I have played some, and it does some incredibly fun and powerful things. And it is a little bit of a higher attack count, but that's because you want to be able to mill out more attacks to be able to pump up your damage even more so. And even then, I don't even know if my current 57 card build is the way I want to go about it. Maybe I want to go even beyond that. With that said, guys, let me know if you like the video. Give it a thumbs up. Hey, if you dislike it, thumbs down works too. If you guys want to watch more deck profiles, gameplay videos coming out, I'm recording them, guys, so look forward to that. They're going to be a ton of fun. Subscribe button's in the corner. And with that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Ciao.